от семьи Алиева. И вот мы сейчас говорим, мой коллега сказал, что по выборам, по борьбе с коррупцией, непосредственно семья Алиева, мафиозная структура, которой я пострадавший, и сегодня, находясь в Америке, я себя не чувствую безопасным от этого коррупционного режима. Меня украли у моей семьи 5-миллиардный бизнес в Азербайджане, и это идет, международные расследования разные. Я бы хотел понять, как Америка собирается бороться с такими коррупционерами, президентами, как Ильхаме Алиев. И я извиняюсь, у меня есть непосредственные доказательства, что сам Алиев принимает участие во всех коррупционных схемах. Кому это интересно, кому я это могу передать?
Okay, I'm actually really grateful for those questions, which are tough questions, because you give me a chance to talk about something which is probably my top priority as the head of this new Bureau for Democracy, Human Rights, and Governance. And that is extending the protection umbrella for human rights defenders, local change agents, business people, anti-corruption activists, prosecutors, whistleblowers, like all of the people who now find themselves the target of a whole host of threats. I mean, 20 years ago, I started working on the issue of closing space for civil society. It was far more targeted. It was primarily legal. There was some sort of physical attacks, but it was focused on a much smaller population. Now, in many places, pretty much anybody who dares to criticize the government or try to hold them accountable or come forward with information about corruption becomes the target of a number of different actions. And as you mentioned, it's physical attacks, it's intimidation, it's illegal detention, it's going after your family, it's undermining your source of income, it's online harassment and defamation, like lawsuits. The number of tactics that are being used have just proliferated. And I think we have been racing to catch up with that metastasizing of threats and people who are being targeted, but we're not where we need to be, right? So if you look at the first and second Summit for Democracy, a lot of the initiatives that the US government rolled out were essentially about protection. So Reporter Shield was meant to provide legal defense to reporters who find themselves on the wrong side of a spurious lawsuit, so that they're not literally mortgaging everything that they have just to defend themselves. We've been trying to implant within all of our grants extra funds for people to get psychosocial care, to enhance their physical security, to enhance their digital security. DRL at the State Department just came out with something that expands the definition of human rights defenders who are able to access sort of those lifeline funds, that emergency support, to those who are part of informal networks or movements and not necessarily part of an NGO. So we are trying, but I think the bottom line is that authoritarians and kleptocrats continue to evolve their tactics, and we need to make sure that there aren't gaps in our safety net. So my bureau is working on really doing a mapping or analysis of all of those different instruments and mechanisms and funds and tools that we have to make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks. Very preliminarily, some of the things that we have identified as potential weaknesses or gaps are exactly what you were talking about. The support to people who are in exile. We do have some initiatives to support, as you mentioned, Belarusian exiles and others who continue to do work in their country of origin. They continue to try to make a difference, even when they're not able to live in that country anymore. But sadly, there are a lot of people in that situation, and so that's been one of the things that's been pointed out as a gap. Number two, the longer term assistance, right? Much of what we do is that emergency support, but once you found yourself a target of some of these attacks, the ramifications of that can last decades or more. And so we're trying to think about what is that longer term approach. thirdly, the psychosocial impact is becoming much more obvious and profound, and so we're trying to figure out how do we support the psychosocial well-being of our partners and local change agents. And then finally, the financial fallout, I would say, of some of this is also becoming really apparent, and that might be something as a development agency that